Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Got a new kind of video for you guys today. So, if you guys have kept an eye on the channel, I've been doing a lot more Vanguard content. And truth is, next week, literally a week from today, is Springfest for me. I'm really excited for it, and it's got my brain kind of doing things. It's just, I like playing competitively, and it's really got me thinking into more strats. So I thought I'd do a couple videos basically talking about certain decks in the meta, what their strengths are, what the weaknesses are, tips to help improve play, as well as tips to go against these certain decks in the meta. Today we're going to be covering the deck that I'm going to be maining at Springfest, which is Varga Dragres. Now, Varga Dragres doesn't have too much as far as, creative play, but it does have a couple of things to help optimize. And for those playing against Varga Dragres, I do have some tips to help you guys when playing against the deck. So hopefully it'll help improve some people's play when they're playing the deck and help you guys in the versus matchup, as well as we're also going to talk about what their best and worst matchups are. So if you guys enjoy this kind of content and want to see more videos like that, let me know down in the comments. Drop a like on the video for the algorithm. But enough from me. Let's jump in and let's get started. So this is my build for set 1. As you see, nothing too crazy. This is what I will be taking next week. It's done me pretty well. I've already won quite a few times at locals, and yeah, I'm really liking the deck. But we're going to talk about some strengths real quick, and then we'll talk about some weaknesses. All right, so the strengths of Varga Dragres. First off, it has a very simple to play game plan. The deck is not difficult. It is really easy to pick up and play. It's got strong early, mid, and late game. While the deck doesn't have a whole lot of space, because you unfortunately do have to play a lot of its current support, it does give you space for cards like, in my case, I play Shenri, I play Brachial Force. These are cards that are really strong straight from the get-go. A lot of times your opponent's not going to flood their board in turn 1 or turn 2, which means Shenri is going to be live basically until turn 3, even turn 4, depending on the matchup. It can, be a little tough later in the game when your opponent starts filling up their board, as we can only hit the front row with Varga Dragres, but it's neither here nor there. By that point, you've already got so much advantage out of it. Same with Brachial Force. This is probably the most hated card in all of Dragon Empire. You will see people guard in obscene ways to stop this card. But turn 3, the deck turns on, Boulder Axe, Shura, Glaive Dragon, they all become live as soon as you hit Varga Dragres, and they're all just solid cards. So you just start ramping up really easily. Obviously, it's a 4 attack deck, plus at a minimum for 1 counterblast, you have 4 attacks. And then every counterblast after that is basically an additional attack, depending on your setup. You can do a maximum of 3, 4, 5, 6. You can do a maximum of 7 attacks in a turn. Granted, it costs 4 counterblasts, but it is very possible. Also, of course, we have what is considered the strongest divine skill in Varga Dragres. Real quick, just to go over it in case anybody isn't aware. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked a grade 3 or greater unit. If your opponent's damage zone has 4 or more cards and this unit attacked 2 or more times, because its first effect allows it to attack already. You counterblast 1 stand, it gets +2 drive. Because you lose your drive checks, your third attack gets drive checks. Now, while that is an amazing finisher and pressure tool, it's still great to use because you're still drawing an extra 2 cards off the twin drive. So you're getting 4 drive checks off of this one dude along with 3 attacks. Really powerful divine skill. Also, this deck can go first or second because of that divine skill. If you're going first, obviously, you get to grade 3 first. You're able to kind of establish yourself a little bit better. If you're going second, your divine skill is live straight from turn 3. Your opponent has to stop you from getting the 4 damage, or as soon as you get to grade 3, your divine skill is live. And with that much advantage that fast, a lot of times, a lot of decks can't handle that. Now, the weaknesses of the deck, the overall weaknesses. For one, it is the divine skill. The divine skill can be played around very easily, a lot easier than most of the other divine skills. Against a defensive deck, if they can stay at 3 damage, you will never get your divine skill off. You and your opponent both having to be at grade 3 means if you went first, you can't use your divine skill to turn 4. Where if you went second, you could use it straight on turn 3, but you're also risking your opponent getting so much advantage that it's not going to matter. Counterblasting. This deck has 0 counter charge at all, and if you want to play generic counter charge, some people play Ethan, or Gojo. Those are great, but those require your Vanguard to hit. Gojo has to boost the Vanguard and hit, which is a really, really bad card, so all I have to do is block the attack that Gojo's boosting. And then Ethan is good, but it's a 9k, which means it can't really do much by itself. So either you have to boost it and make suboptimal numbers, or you have it sitting in the background doing nothing, hoping that Varga Dragres is going to hit. So counterblasting is just so annoying with this deck because you have to be so careful to make sure you don't block yourself from getting your skills off. It has a very, very linear game plan. Like, it's really easy to predict what they're going to do because they're always going to be going for that divine skill. There's also like no creativity or room for expression in the deck because once you've played one Varga Dragres, you basically play them all. There's like, even in my build, maybe Shenri and Brachio are the only cards that could come out. And in most cases, you already see Meadhot, which does the same thing as Shenri for lower numbers. Maybe Ethan for countercharge, but like, there's not much deviation in the deck. So once you get familiar with playing against the deck, you will always know what your opponent's going to be playing because it's all basically the same. The deck doesn't do great at hitting numbers. A lot of the times, most of their big attacks are just one card guards. The only time you really be able to get any decent numbers is with Persona Ride, which again is turn 4 on. And it's a lot of reason people will play the Cup. Gradius Galadale, because the Cup is an additional Persona Ride, but with the fact that we're playing, you know, an EU and we don't have the ban list for strides, unfortunately Bursting Angel Ladder is kind of needed. Those are the biggest glaring weaknesses of Varga Dragres. Like I said, super easy game plan and a lot of counterplay. Now, a couple strats for using the deck. First off, you know, you want to get your opponent to 4 damage. If you're going first, you want to just take as little damage as possible. You don't want to let your opponent blow you out too fast. If they try to rush you, you know you can get them back on the clapback. Getting to 4 damage in Varga Dragres too fast can be a little bit detrimental, especially if you're going first, because you don't have access to your divine skill till turn 4. So you do have to kind of manage your damage a little bit. Granted, you also want to take damage because you want to be able to go nuts once you get to your turn 4. Going first. Going second, you don't want to guard a thing. You want to punch your opponent as hard and as fast as possible. In this case right here that we have set up, this is actually a really, really strong board that people hate to see. Normally you want to swing with your Vanguard first. Whether your opponent gets a damage trigger or not, this attack column can still hit. And if you do get a trigger and it goes to a 33, a lot of times your opponent's going to take it, which means you're just going to draw an extra 2 cards. Even if they do block it, which they would have had to drop 2 to 3 cards to block it, you're still going to draw a card off of Shinra. Really, really solid for the early game. Now, this or a similar setup is your ideal for going for your divine skill. Hear me out. Obdurasi Glaive gains 10k on his own. This is an example of a Persona Ride turn. Like, this is a solid turn, but you're trying to push your opponent as hard as possible. You want to get them to 4 damage. Now, I don't have an opponent here, but we're going to pretend that they have 2 damage, let's say. So in this situation, we would want to attack like this. We want to swing as high as possible because we want to be able to try and deal that 1 damage. So we're going to swing. We would swing with Shura first. Energy Blast 2, give her 5k. The reason we want to do that is because at 25k, that's still only a 1 card guard. This is what I was talking about with the numbers. A little sucky, but here's why. They're going to guard this. Now, because we have Obdurasi Glaive, we're going to swing. We're going to save him. If we had a different rear guard, we would swing the other rear guard first. So we're going to swing Varga, Counter Blast 1. Varga gains 10k. Whoops. Retires the front row. Now they're going to restand after our attack. And then we're going to Counter Blast 1 to call Shura with an additional 10,000 power. So Shura is huge. So now we get our Twin Drive. Bang, bang. We got no triggers. We restand. Now, whether we hit or not, it's going to determine what we do next. If our opponent's at 4 damage already, we would swing Vanguard first, and then just restand Vanguard, keep going, because we want to get our drive checks. If our opponent is at 2 or 3 damage, we want to swing with the rear guards first. So we would swing Obdurasi Glaive for 33, and then we would swing Shura, and depending on the number of cards in hand, we can actually Energy Blast 2 again, to give Shura another 5k, putting her all the way up to 48,000. Then we swing with our Vanguard, which on the second swing has no drive checks, but because we attacked in this order, now they have to guard the Vanguard too to make sure they don't go to 4 damage, because then if they go to 4 damage, since this was our last swing, we can now counterblast 1 and use the Divine Skill to restand. So attack order does matter a lot with this deck, depending on your opponent's damage. If they had gone to 4 damage earlier, we could have swung Vanguard earlier, leaving our rear guards ready for drive checks. But because they were defending, and if they're at 2, 3 damage and we're trying to push them to 4, we can then change the order of our attack to try and max out on our Divine Skill. Which means on our second swing of our Vanguard, we get another Twin Drive, but we managed to get all of our attacks. So attack order is a big thing. This deck, again, does great going first or second. It just depends which one and what deck you're up against, how you have to play. Now, playing against this deck, a couple quick tips. The biggest one being damage control. You do not want to give them too much damage. You have to basically think about it this way. Every damage you give them is an additional attack or a potential additional attack. Now, if you only give them 1 damage, it may turn into a grind game. It may take a while, but that means they can only use their Vanguard skill every turn, and just the Vanguard skill. If you can limit them to 1 damage a turn, you don't even have to worry about the Divine Skill because they can't use it. They need 2 counterblasts to be able to use it. So either they have to not use their Vanguard skill for an entire turn, which means they're losing out on an attack, and just eat more damage, or they just forget their Divine Skill and just use it as the resetting Vanguard. It also means that they can't use Shura to get multi-attack. It's the easiest way to deal with them. It's why the deck counterblasts so little, technically, or can survive counterblasting so little, because they have no counter charge. And it's one of the inherent weaknesses of the deck, because you need 2 counterblasts for the Divine Skill, and if you want to use Shura, you need 3 or more. It's annoying. Defensive decks, like really strong defense, also shuts this deck down because of the fact that you have to get to 4 damage to be able to use their Divine Skill. If your deck can be defensive while still being able to, poke them enough where they have to keep on taking damage, they will run out of steam. While if you ask anybody, they say Varga Dragres has a lot of draw power. The truth is, it's pseudo draw power, I like to call it. Because it's all 1-for-1s, you have to basically give up your board to draw those cards while also defending. That's why if you're going first against this deck and you can push them really, really hard, sure, they rack up the damage and their skills are live, but if they have to keep blocking, especially if they start having to block with their combo pieces, it kills their offense, because they have to play the cards to be able to draw the cards. They have to play the cards to keep an offense, but then they have to get rid of them to draw. Eventually they're going to run out. It does happen. Like, just look at what I have on the board. Shinri. Shinri is a powerful booster, but it leaves the field to draw you a card. Impale Horn Dragon leaves the field to draw you a card. Brachioforce leaves the field to draw you a card. The only ones that actually stay on the board are Shura and Abdurrahsi Glaive, which if you leave these rear guards on the board, your opponent's going to swing into them because they don't want to give you more damage than they need to. That's just easy kind of strats to deal with Varga Dragres. If you're going first against Varga Dragres, you want to obviously get to grade 3 as fast as possible to help with defense. You do have to worry about the Divine Skill, so you want to be a little more defensive. Keep your damage relatively low, so when they get to grade 3, they don't push you to 4 damage. If you're going second, you can be a little riskier taking more hits, but you also want to push them, because if you went second, no matter what, they can't do their Divine Skill until they get to turn 4. So you can be more aggressive if you're going second against this deck. Now, worst matchups. Believe it or not, the absolute worst matchup in the current meta that I've noticed, and honestly it frustrates me that it's so bad, is Direful Dolls. Direful Dolls, especially in the hands of a good Direful Doll player, will frustrate the shit out of any Varga Dragres player. It's like, it's frustrating. If they go first, majority of the time, they will win. Unless you get ridiculously lucky with triggers, Direful Dolls will beat Varga Dragres every time. The fact is, they can do easy 4 or 5 attack turns while being able to maintain ridiculous defense. And because Varga Dragres doesn't hit crazy numbers, the only time they'll really start burning cards out of their hand is on Persona Ride turns. And if you don't Persona Ride turns, they're just going to laugh at you. Direful Doll's biggest weakness is up against really, really high numbers, because they can only use their defensive cards 1 per battle. So they actually specialize at dealing with multi-attack decks, which is what Varga Dragres is. Like, for example, Shura is a 5k guard. They can just guard one card from the bind zone. Obduracity Glaive, 15k guard. They can guard one card from the bind zone. They don't even have to touch their hand until they start dealing with your Vanguard's attacks. It's really, really annoying, and it's like a wall. The only way Varga Dragres can deal with this matchup, they gotta go first, and they have to beat the ever-living shit out of you. Because once Direful Dolls gets to turn 3, once they get to see their grade 3, they're just going to be like, cool, we just sustain and now we play defensive. And a lot of times you won't even see 4 damage. They'll stay at 3 damage until they absolutely know they can survive your Divine Skill. And even with the Divine Skill, they've amassed so much advantage at that point that like you will not be able to kill them. And then they'll just come back and get you on the clapback. If you don't believe me, try it. Try playing Direful Dolls against Varga Dragres. Limit them to 3 damage for as long as you can, and you'll see just how annoying it gets for Varga Dragres. As far as their best matchup goes, if I had to pick one in the current meta, I would probably say it would be Welstra. Welstra is a great deck, ridiculously offensive, and has a lot of kill potential, but with all the advantage that Varga can get, and the fact that Welstra is an offensive deck and wants to deal damage, which, you know, Varga wants to eat damage, they kind of play into each other. Welstra does have some options to play against Varga Dragres, but a lot of times Varga Dragres is like, hit me in the face so I could punch you even harder. That's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I gave you some tips to play against Varga Dragres or play with Varga Dragres. If you guys want to see more videos like this, I will actually do another one next week. I might do a couple of these next week just because, like I said, we're leading into Springfest and I've got all kinds of ideas running through my head. If you guys want to talk about this stuff live, I will be playing some Vanguard on stream this weekend. I really want to get some more practice in. I'm going to be playing at locals. I'll let you guys know how my locals go. I will be getting as much practice as I can. I want to make sure that I do not mess this up when I go to Springfest because my team's counting on me. If you guys want to check me out on social media, those links will be down below. That's it for me, and I'll catch you guys on this video. Later.